I was sitting in my car one morning before work. I was in an empty parking lot on the roof of the garage. I was praying. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon. It was to my back, I remember, and there was nobody around. It was quiet. I'm not a morning person, but this time, I was there early. There was nobody there. Well, anyway, so around this time, I was feeling like I should be doing more to serve God. I had this conviction, like I needed to be doing something grand to serve Him. Yet, at the same time, I felt spiritually I wasn't in a place to do it or lead others. So I had this conviction, like, I've got to let go of all these sins and I need to be doing more. And I was just praying to God, like, help me become more like Christ. Help me to do what I've been put on this earth to do. And I didn't feel like I was making any traction. So here I am sitting here and I'm praying to God. I'm like, God, please just show me a sign. I'm like, please, God, just, show me that you're there listening. And let me clarify, like, I don't think we should base our faith on whether we get these miraculous signs. But I do know that God speaks to us through His creation. And I believe that our sinfulness and blindness keeps us from fully recognizing God and the way He communicates to us. And, perhaps He's giving us signs all the time. But in this particular moment, I felt like maybe He took my blinders off for a moment. But all I know is that in the midst of my prayer, I'm literally saying out loud something like, God, if you're listening, just show me something. In that moment, I heard a loud tapping on the roof of my car. It startled me. I looked up immediately, and of course the noise was coming from outside on the roof of my car. My heart literally jumped out of my chest. I had no idea what it was. So I looked around, my shoulders, I looked behind me, looked everywhere around and scanning the empty parking lot until I saw something moving in front of me. Now, like I said, my back was to the sun. So I could see the shadow of my car on the concrete in front of me. And there was these silhouettes of two birds dancing on the roof of my car. Just tapping away. You gotta be kidding me. It was like they were trying to get my attention. So, meanwhile, I was mid-prayer. And I'm in this moment of like, God, are you speaking to me? And I start thinking, like, what is this? Is this from God? If it is, it's odd, right? And again, there's like silence everywhere. And so I get out of my car to get a better look, but I'm kind of like shielding myself from getting pecked, right? Because there's birds on my car. Two birds. Two ravens. Ravens have always kind of creeped me out anyways, but here they are, two ravens just looking at me. One of them with a piece of bread in its mouth. And they looked at me for a second, and then they flew away, leaving the bread, an entire slice of bread. But it was thicker, and it had a lighter color to it, kind of whitish. I'm standing there, like, kind of weirded out, looking at this piece of bread on the roof of my car, and I felt, in that moment, the presence of God in this interaction. I wasn't sure what it meant. But then my mind, went toward the significance of bread, because I thought about, Jesus, He is the bread of life. But I wasn't sure. So I grabbed my work bag and I headed to work, my head down in my phone, Googling ravens plus bread plus Bible. And the first thing that comes up is 1 Kings 17:2. And it's titled, Elijah Fed by Ravens. Oh my gosh. Like, my heart was pounding at this moment because I was like, this has to be from God. I mean, here I was, praying to God, asking for Him to show me a sign, right? And two ravens bring me a piece of bread. And I don't even know what all this means. All I know is that I saw the title, Elijah Fed by Ravens, and my heart's pounding. Of course, I'm at work now, and I'm supposed to be working, and here I am on my phone, computer, looking up this verse, right? And so I'll just read it to you. It said, Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Get away from here and turn eastward, and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. And it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. For he went and stayed by the brook which flows into the Jordan. So apparently this passage is pretty widely known, but at the time, I'd never heard of it. So to give you some context before I explain this passage, Elijah was a prophet of God, and his name Elijah means Yahweh is my God. He was a prophet during the reign of King Ahab in the northern kingdom of Israel around the 9th century BC. King Ahab had turned nearly all of Israel to pagan worship, and there were like 7,000 people left of all of the land who had not bowed their knee to the pagan god Baal. They were like in fear for their lives. They were in fear of persecution. And so Elijah was the one person who was standing up to this. And he had prayed to God and asked for it not to rain on the land in an effort to humble the people and turn them back to God. So God, he held the rain back for 3.5 years. And so then word got out that Elijah had caused this devastating drought by praying to God. So King Ahab and many others, they wanted Elijah dead. So that's where this passage picks up. And it says that God sent him to the brook for his own safety. It says, and it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So according to the research I've done, the escape was more than just protection, right? It was to train Elijah to depend on God in a season of drought. He had to trust that God would keep this brook flowing. And he also had to accept that the food from the ravens, which were unclean animals to him, these were disgusting animals, I guess, and he was to accept this food from them. And interestingly, the name Cherith, which is the name of the brook, comes from the ancient Hebrew word meaning to cut away or to cut up or cut off. Some significance here as far as Elijah needing to cut some things out of his life that were hindering him from putting his entire faith in God. And the phrase, I have commanded the ravens to feed you there is an emphasis on the word there. The ravens would feed Elijah as he stayed at that brook. Elijah wanted to be anywhere but that brook. He wanted to be out preaching. He wanted to be serving God. But God wanted him to sit right there at that brook in solitary confinement, learning how to have complete faith in God, to sit still and just let God work. Okay? So he had to learn how to do that. So I've always had problems with dependence on outside things, whether it's something as simple as caffeine or other things, things I'd rather not mention. But the point is, I've always depended on something to keep me going or to calm my anxiety. And I know that when I was sitting in my car asking for God to show me something, I believe he was saying to trust him. Let go of all that other stuff. Cut it out. Me to cut away everything else. It's amazing that someone as holy as Elijah had to cut things out of his life. I can only imagine how many things that need to be cut out of my life, things I have no idea are a problem. Because I'm dealing with these other sins, these simple sins, like, I don't want to call them simple, but, things I should be past by now, I feel like. So, also, just as Elijah felt like he had to be somewhere else, doing more for God, so I was in the same place, wondering if my purpose was more than what I was doing. God was telling me that your purpose is here and now. Raising your family. Doing your job. Changing the lives of those people in your life in that moment. I didn't need to be on some mission somewhere. That wasn't what God wanted for me in that moment. And then if you notice that every bit of food that came to Elijah came from these beaks of these unclean animals. He had to put away ideas of what clean and unclean were. Otherwise, he would die. He would die of starvation. Famous theologian Charles Spurgeon drew 2 points from this application, and he likened the food of the ravens to bringing spiritual food. First, he recognized that God could bring a good word to us, a sign, if you will, through an unclean vessel. Something as unclean as a raven. And then the second part, which I think applies to me, we can bring spiritual food to others, being unclean ourselves. He says, but see too how possible it is for us to carry bread and meat to God's servants and do some good things for his church and yet be ravens still. God directed me to this passage for a reason. I believe that God is in control of everything, every single thing, right? So the fact that I was praying there, asking for God knew, God wanted those ravens there. He wanted that piece of bread there. He wanted me to see it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened, right? I think there's meaning in everything we do. Perhaps I just saw it in that moment. It's also kind of cool, because it's from God. God was telling me to continue my daily work, and He will sustain me, and that there will come a day when the water dries up in my life, and I'll need to take a leap of faith. Until then, I need to build my faith now, learn how to trust in Him. I thought a lot about those ravens, what they were doing there. Were they just fighting over a piece of bread, or did they actually bring it to me? So I went out on my lunch break. I decided to go back out to the parking garage and check and see if the bread was still there. Maybe they just flew away because they were scared of me, and they would come back and get the bread. The bread was still there, on the roof of my car. Why didn't the ravens eat that bread? I would think that they could have been fighting over it. One of them would have came back, and the other wasn't looking, but it was still there. I didn't know what to think of that.